So we already talked a little bit. We talked a little bit about seeds the other day. So what exactly is a seed? What did we say? Well, all together, what is it, Ashley? Yeah, it's a tiny little. It's a tiny little plant. A seed inside of it has a tiny little plant embryo. And then most of what we would call the seed is actually energy, stored up carbohydrates that seed is going to use as it begins to grow, as it germinates, is what we say. So it forms from an ovule that's been pollinated. So in order for a seed to actually form, pollen needs to land on the stigma of the flower. It grows a pollen tube down the style, and then a sperm cell from the pollen travels to the ovule, combines with it, and fertilizes the ovule. And once it's a fertilized ovule, it can start to grow into an embryo. And then around that embryo, the cotyledon, the stored up foods, start to form. A coat, a little shell around the outside forms, and then you have a fully formed seed. So inside the seed is the embryo and the food supply, and then the layer around the outside. It's called the seed coat. It's a protective layer. Now we consume a lot of seeds. Not just things you probably think about, like sunflower seeds, but nuts are seeds. Beans are seeds. Flour is made from seeds. How many people in your house, if you buy bread, how many people buy white bread? Raise your hand. White bread. Whole wheat bread. Okay. So it's mostly whole wheat in this class. So what's the difference between the two? Yeah, but like what's actually different in their manufacture, in their baking? Lily?
So white bread is like bleached flour?
It is, sometimes bleached flour. Think about this diagram. Which part of the seed, the wheat seed, is used to make white flour and white bread? Just the food storage. Okay? To make whole wheat flour, they include the coat around the outside and the embryo inside of there. It's all the parts of the seed ground up, and that's why it's kind of like got more texture sort of to it. There's like little flecks that you see in whole wheat. That's because it's this ground up seed coats in there as well. Have you ever heard of wheat germ? Anyone ever heard of wheat germ? Sometimes people put it on stuff. It's like nutritional. It's actually just the embryo parts of a wheat plant. All right, so anyway, seeds are little packages of embryo and food that's going to eventually grow into a plant. And so when a seed is going to grow, it's generally, in terms of evolution, it's not a great adaptation for seeds just to drop to the ground and grow right where they were produced. Because what's going to happen? Yeah, there are going to be a whole bunch of seeds growing right where there's the parent tree or plant. They're all going to be competing for the same nutrients. They're all going to compete for the same amount of light. And so that doesn't usually make sense. So most of the time, plants have some means of getting their seeds somewhere else. We call that seed dispersal. This is one way. What are these?
Those are helicopters.
Little helicopters. What kind of tree do they fall from? You guys know your trees at all?
No, not.
My dad.
Do you know what kind of?
Is it like fern?
They are maple seeds.
I said that.
That little helicopter shape, you know, when they fall through the air, they're spinning around. Now, if there's no wind, they'll just fall to the ground. Probably won't grow. But if the wind picks up, it can carry these seeds pretty far away. That's a means of seed dispersal, a way of getting those seeds somewhere else. What's this? That comes from, that is a coconut. That's the hard outer covering of a coconut. And coconuts float in the water. They're hollow on the inside, allowing them to float. So as they fall from trees, they often live on the coasts, these sort of trees. As they fall and get taken into the water, they can float away. Eventually, sometime they wash back up on shore somewhere else, and they start to grow. They've been dispersed. Some plants, it's called jewelweed, or sometimes these are called touch-me-nots. They may grow in your backyard. They have these little flowers. When the flowers mature, they form this tight little pod, and when you touch it, what happens? It springs open and ejects its seeds, sending them flying. That's its means of seed dispersal. I'll show you this video. It's kind of hard to see, but they grow all around here, so they're kind of neat when you find them. They sort of burst open.
High quality music.
Do you guys know what these look like? Have you seen them around?
I've never seen that.
It's like a tiny little pod. They're maybe a half an inch long or so.
Wait, is this like Sticker Ross and stuff? Bursted it.
It just explodes, basically. I'll show you again.
Oh, I thought like the seeds actually like. Yeah.
The seeds go. I mean, this video you can hardly see it. Hold on. No, it's just the flower. It's the mature flower.
That's kind of sad.
All right. So that's one means of seed dispersal. These exploding seeds, exploding seed pods, I should say. The seeds themselves don't actually explode. One of the most common forms of seed dispersal is using animals to help disperse the seeds. So we know from when we just talked about pollination, often animals help pollinate, spread pollen from one plant to another. Animals also often help disperse the seeds in a couple ways. And one of the most common ways is through fruits. So in the formation of a fruit, pollination happens. The ovule is fertilized by a sperm cell, and then it turns into a seed, and around it forms the fruit. So when you have a fruit, and what are you actually eating? The seeds are in there. What would it be surrounding the seeds? The ovule outside. The ovule's in here, the little bubble that the seed's in. What's around that? What's the base of the female parts? The ovary. So what I'm holding in my hand is the ripened ovary of a single paraflower. Okay? So what used to be here? The stem, which attached it to the plant. What is this dried up stuff you see?
How is that parent?
Those are the remains of the stamens, okay, and the flowers and all that stuff. That's what that little part that's holding on. So if you think about a fruit, that's what you have. You have the stem part that attaches to the tree. There was a flower facing that way, got pollinated, the ovary turned into the fruit. So when you eat a fruit, you're actually eating the mature, ripened ovaries of the flower. And so this is a helpful adaptation because fruits contain lots of sugar. They provide a good food source for animals. Animals eat the fruit. Now, unlike humans, they consume the whole thing, including the seeds. And then they walk around somewhere else. Eventually, they go to the bathroom, and they then disperse those seeds in another location. The seeds have been dispersed. So fruit is a reward that encourages animals to consume it, to spread those seeds somewhere else. Some plants also, or some fruits, produce on the outside burrs or structures. Structures that will attach to an animal and sort of hitch a ride on it so that those seeds get dispersed in that way. So burdocks, for example, okay, yeah, they get caught in your hair, on your clothes, on your dog's fur. That helps to spread those seeds out, take them somewhere else. Okay, some animals like squirrels bury seeds. Nuts are seeds, and they don't remember to pick them all up, and so some of those seeds will grow into a tree.
Is this the same thing as like vegetables?
No. So what's the well, we'll talk about it in a minute, because yeah. So fruits are typically brightly colored to attract animals, and then lots of different animals will consume fruits for energy, and then eventually those seeds get dispersed. Some seeds won't even germinate until they've been through the digestive tract of an animal. So here's some examples. That's some bear poop. Lots of seeds in it. This is fox poop. Again, you see all those seeds in there? Because the seed itself is not digestible. So the seed just goes through the digestive tract and out. Okay, that's raccoon scat, coyotes. Now this is, yeah, that dude also then sells it. So this is a special type of coffee. This is the most expensive coffee in the world. Okay, it's about $200 a pound. So to give you an idea, other coffee is maybe, like if you bought good coffee, it's probably $10 per pound. This coffee costs $200 per pound because this type of coffee, what happens is, so most coffee comes from a fruit. It's collected and and the seeds taken out, it's roasted, ground up. That's how they make coffee. This type of coffee, however, an animal called the civet eats the coffee berries, swallows them, poops them out. Somebody collects those seeds, takes the poop part away, roasts those seeds, and that is called Kopi Luwak. It's the most expensive coffee that you can buy. I've never drank Kopi Luwak coffee. Maybe at the end of class or tomorrow we can watch this video about Kopi Luwak. So, have you ever heard people say, oh, that's actually not, a tomato's actually not a vegetable, it's a fruit, stuff like that? Are they correct? Yes. If it has seeds in it, it's a fruit because it came from the ripened ovary. That's what. So, what is corn? It's a fruit. Bananas? Fruit. Eggplant? Seeds in it? It's a fruit. Yep. Pears? Tomatoes? Peppers? Carrots? No. What is a carrot?
Not fruit.
So typically, I mean, there's lots of terms, but when we say vegetable, typically we mean a part of the plant that was part of the stem or the leaves of a plant. So lettuce is a vegetable. Celery is a vegetable. A carrot, where is a carrot grow? That's part of the root system. How about a zucchini? Yep. So if it has seeds in it, it's a fruit.
You know what? I'm still calling.
Have it your way. Be wrong if you want, Kosia.
I will be
Wrong.
wrong.
All right. So once a seed has been released, dispersed, and land somewhere, it will eventually start to grow into a new plant. That's the purpose of a seed. And seeds don't germinate. They need certain conditions in order to start growing. That's why, like, you could go to this Home Depot, buy a packet of seeds, and they don't start growing in the packet. They don't grow until you plant them. And they need certain conditions in order to start growing. And so some of those conditions are water. It's one of the key factors. Seeds will start to grow typically once they've gotten wet, and that water helps activate enzymes that are stored inside of those seeds. They need oxygen to break down the energy stored in the seed, which is basically like a starch. To break that down, oxygen is required. And proper temperature is required. Seeds typically won't start germinating until they've reached the proper temperature. Some seeds won't start growing until they've actually been exposed to fire. Certain types of pine trees, the cones don't open up. They're sort of like almost glued shut with this resin, and they don't open up until a fire has gone through. That melts that resin. They can open up, drop their seeds, and that's an adaptation to that species, helping the forest renew after a forest fire, because they've evolved in environments where fires are a common part of the ecology. So when we look at a germinating seed, seed gets wet, kind of swells up, the coat around the outside splits, oxygen is able to get in, and then the energy stored up in that seed is able to start to be broken down. The root starts to grow. Okay, it can sense gravity. It grows downward toward gravity. Okay. The stem, using energy that's stored up, the stem starts to grow until the seed emerges out of the ground. And then the first leaves emerge. And once those first leaves emerge, then it can start to go through the process of photosynthesis. Until that time, all the energy for its growth is coming from the stored energy inside of the seed. So all we've been talking about in regards of flowers and pollination, that was sexual reproduction, right? We had the combining of a sperm cell from a pollen grain with an egg cell from an ovule to form the embryo. But plants can also reproduce asexually. And just as a reminder, asexual is reproduction with only a single parent, where the offspring are just a copy of the parent. And many plants can reproduce asexually and sexually. Grass is a good example. So grass grows, when a grass plant grows, it can also grow a stem under the ground laterally and then pop out new shoots that might look from above like they're separate plants, but actually they're all connected by this thing called the rhizome, this root. And so often this is helpful. It's an adaptation because it can happen pretty quickly. Okay, so grass can reproduce quickly by just growing a stem underground, popping up a new plant, rather than waiting for pollination and the growth of a seed and so forth. So asexual reproduction can happen quickly, but as we know, it doesn't add any variation to the population. The offspring are identical to the parent. And so that sometimes can be a disadvantage, because if there's some change in the environment, or there's some disease or something like that, it can wipe out the whole population because they're all identical. None would have any variations that made it resistant. Humans often rely on this asexual reproduction to grow crops to grow ornamental plants for landscaping and so forth. So there's some interesting things that you can do sort of related to this. It's called artificial propagation. So you can actually take a plant and you can take the base that has the roots, cut it, and make a little slit in it. And then you can actually take another species of plant, cut it into sort of this blade shape, insert it into the stock. There's special tape you wrap it up with, and over a period of time, it will heal. The vascular tissue will heal, and you'll actually have two different plants, one on the bottom, providing the roots, and one on the top. This is often used in fruit trees. So you can actually graft a peach stem and a plum stem onto the root stock and have a single tree growing out of the ground that produces both peaches and plums. This is done with woody plants, not like vegetables, not herbaceous. They actually make some that can grow two types of apples on one stock. And so these two stems were grafted onto this base. It's often also done, does anyone in their landscape around your house have one of those like umbrella plants that grows down like that? If you, I mean in the spring probably, if you look underneath that umbrella part, it's made by grafting two plants together. It has one plant that has a nice straight stem, and then onto that they graft the plant that grows those drooping branches. And you could actually see, because there's like a swelling around where they grafted the two plants together, you'll be able to see it if you look closely at one of those plants in your landscape. We know that some plants are carnivorous. They consume insects, but they're still actually considered autotrophs. Yeah, so they still make their own food using sunlight. So why are they consuming insects? They actually are not getting energy from the insects. What they're actually getting are certain nutrients. Because these are plants that typically live in nutrient-poor soils, where there's not a lot of phosphorus or nitrogen in the soil. So because they can't get those nutrients they need from the soil, they get it by trapping insects, digesting them, and then absorbing those nutrients. So they're still autotrophs. So what is this?
Venus flytrap.
That's a Venus flytrap. You know what this is?
I saw it.
This is a sundew. Has a sticky resin on it that captures the insects. How about that?
It's like a vase.
That's a pitcher plant.
Yep.
So these are cool. I actually saw these in the wild. I've never seen them in the wild. I saw them when I was with my daughter. We were camping up at what's the name of the lake? Brown Tract Pond. You go camping there in the summer sometimes, and you go hiking to this pond you can only get to by hiking, and we saw some of these pitcher plants along the way growing in this wet, marshy area, because that's a nutrient-poor area. So some are designed to snap and trap the insect inside. Some act as like a sticky substance, and others sort of trap the animal inside. So this is really cool. This is a little video that shows how the Venus flytrap actually works. So you can't just touch it and cause it to close. There's actually more involved than that, and this video will show you some of that. So one interesting thing is that plants actually can grow. We don't often think about it, but plants can take in information. They can respond to stimuli from the outside. And they can do that. They don't move quickly, but in some cases they do, like we saw in the Venus flytrap. But plants often will grow in a certain way in response to a certain stimulus. And we call that a tropism. Tropism is when a plant grows in a certain way based on a stimulus. So you probably, if you look at my plants growing on the side of the room, those plants are all growing towards the window. That's something called phototropism. What that means is the plant is growing in a response to light. Most plants will grow towards the light. The roots of plants will grow towards water. That's called hydrotropism. Plants can sense gravity, and the stems will grow upward, the roots of a plant will grow downward. If you take a plant, flip it on its side, the stem will grow up, the roots will grow down. If you switch it over, they'll start growing in the opposite directions again. That's called gravitotropism. Some plants even respond to touch, like the Venus flytrap, or there's other plants as well, like the sensitive plant. So here's an example. If you tip a plant on its side, it'll start growing upward. Okay? So this would be an example of phototropism, gravitotropism, thigmotropism, hydrotropism. So I think there's some cool slides or videos that show some of these. Kind of like, so they do it relatively slowly, so you often need like a time-lapse video to capture it. So here's a couple videos that are time-lapse. What kind of tropism is that? Gravitotropism.
It was just growing.
Yeah, I do love me some banjo too. See the roots growing downward?
Yeah, but it's not like
Stem growing upward? This is neat. This is a corn growing with just one single light in the middle. The plants grow toward it, but then they turn on the bigger light and continue the video. And then they straighten up and they start growing straight up.
they look like they're bound.
These are vines growing. Vines grow in this sort of swinging fashion until they make touch with a vertical surface, and then they start growing up that.
That looks cool.
That is definitely knowledge.
I don't want to.
I want to see the next seed or if you know that.
Those other two still going.
Yeah, they'll catch it. There you go.
The next one.
Oh, let go.
What if they catch it? Let's see the portrait.
Then they'll be holding hands. It'll be so cute.
No, the next one.
Wow.
Oh no, not a ladybug.
I thought they're supposed to be good luck. I guess it's not very good luck for this ladybug. Really, any insect doesn't really. Uh-oh. Oh. All right, we'll finish up tomorrow.